Hello students, so today we will be starting with another new chapter, the new chapter of class 12 from history part 1 book, Mohenjodaro, a planned urban center. So today we will be discussing how Mohenjodaro was a planned urban center and what were the excavations being made by the scientists during that time. As we have learned before also, we have understood that Mohenjodaro or the Harappan civilization was understood to be the most advanced civilization. Now, what kind of civilization were being excavated by the archaeologists during that time? So, let us discuss. Now you see a planned urban center. Mohenjo-daro is the most well-known site. The first site to be discovered was Harappa. Harappa was discovered in the year 1921 by Daya Ram Sahani, and Mohenjo-daro was discovered by R.D. Banerjee in 1922. Now, Harappa was the first site to be discovered and Mohenjo-daro was discovered after that. You can see that Harappa was discovered in the year 1921. Yes, in the year 1921, Harappa was first discovered by Daya Ram Sahani and Mohenjo-daro was first discovered by R.D. Banerjee in the year 1922. In the following year, the Mohenjo-daro was being discovered. The urban settlement was divided into two sections, one smaller but higher and the other much larger but lower. Now, the urban settlement. If we talk about the urban settlement, one is higher but smaller, but the other one is much larger but is smaller. Which means you see, if I talk about two sections, it is divided into two sections. One is smaller but higher, which means the whole area is small, but the height is very much larger in comparison to the other town, which is very much larger but lower. You see, those two sections are divided into two parts, the citadel or the lower town. Yes, the higher one is comprised to be the citadel and the and the lower one is considered to be the lower town. Now the citadel. If I talk about the citadel is smaller but much higher. It is smaller but it is much higher in height. But if I talk about the lower town is designated as much larger but lower. It is much larger in comparison to citadel but lower in height. The citadel owes its height to the fact that the buildings were constructed on mud brick platform. It was walled, which meant physically separated from the lower town. Now, if I talk about the citadel here owes to its height. It has a larger height in comparison to the lower town as because the buildings were constructed on mud brick platform. On the citadel, the buildings were constructed on mud brick platforms and it was walled. It was walled in such a way that it is separated from the lower town, which means there is a division between the citadel and the lower town. And here comes the lower town was also walled and several buildings were built on platform which was served as foundation. Now, in the lower town, there were several buildings. Several buildings are there in the lower town in comparison to the citadel, and here the buildings were being constructed on a foundation, on a mud brick foundation. Now, let's go to this picture. You see, in this picture, you can see the citadel here and the lower town. Let me show you clearly. You see this part. This part is comprised to be the citadel. Here, this part is comprised to be the citadel, and here, this part. This part is comprised to be the lower town. Lower town. You see, the citadel is much higher but lower in comparison to the lower town. Lower town is lower but much larger. You see, the area in the lower town is much larger in comparison to the citadel, which is much smaller. So this is the picture of the Harappan excavation when it was being discovered. It has been said that it is citadel and it is the lower town. I hope you have understood. Now here, domestic architecture and citadel. Now what do you mean by the domestic architecture? You see why it is comprised to be the domestic architecture, just because most of the people used to stay in those parts of the lower town and the citadel. Now, here we will be giving a brief comparison between the citadel and the lower town. The lower town at Mohenjo-daro provides example of residential buildings. Many were centered on a courtyard with rooms on all sides. Now, if I talk about the residential buildings, most of the residential buildings were in the lower town. And in the lower town, there was a big courtyard. It was centered around a big courtyard where all the rooms are on the sides. Like for example, there is one courtyard in the lower town I am talking about. There is one courtyard, and in all sides there were rooms. You see, the courtyard is comprised to be the most important part. The courtyard was probably the center of activities such as cooking and weaving, particularly during hot and dry weather. Now, as during that time, most of the people were very much traditional during the Harappan period. As a result, most of the people in the courtyard used to be weaving such activities such as cooking and weaving. And third point, you see every house had its own bathroom paved with bricks with drains connected through the wall to the street drains. Now, every house, each and every house has its own bathroom which is connected to the drains, and through the wall to the street drains as well. During that time, if I talk about the drainage system in the Harappan civilization, the drainage system is considered to be the most advanced one. The drainage system was so good that the archaeologists were also being shocked at how they have come to know about the drainage system. Some houses have remains of the staircases, and many houses had wells. Now, if I talk about the houses, during that time, most of the houses had wells. Total 700 wells were being discovered at the site of Mohenjodaro. Total 700 wells were being discovered at the site of Mohenjodaro. Now let's come to the next part. Here we will be understanding about the citadel. Now how citadel is different in comparison to the lower town. Now you see, if I talk about the lower town, there was a courtyard in the lower town. As a result, much of the brief activities were being practiced on the courtyard itself. And also the drainage system was also very popular in the lower town. Now in the citadel, most of the evidence were found on the citadel, those for special public purposes. Now, in citadel, most of the buildings or most of the things were being excavated just because for the special public purposes. During that time, people in the citadel used to use some of the objects or some of the things for special public purposes. Here it has already been mentioned for special public purposes such as the warehouses. Now, in citadel, the warehouses are being excavated, and they are the most common thing in the citadel. Now, the warehouse, a massive structure of which the lower brick portion remained, while the upper portion, probably of wood, decayed long ago, and the great bath. Now, if I talk about the warehouse there, you see the lower part of the warehouse, which means the floor part, it was all made with lower brick or the mud brick, but the upper part is made of the wood, and that wood is being decayed. So as a result, the wood was not being found there, but it had been decayed long time ago. You see in the warehouse, the wood which has been constructed over, it has decayed long time ago, and there second comes the great bath. Now, first it has been discovered the warehouse, and second comes the great bath. Now, here the great bath. Now, what is the great bath? This is very, very important, and this question always come in your examination regarding the characteristics of the great bath. Now, the great bath. The great bath was a large rectangular tank. It is a large rectangular tank in a courtyard surrounded by a corridor on all four sides. Now, it is a large rectangular tank. It is a large rectangular tank in a courtyard which has been surrounded by a corridor on all four sides. You see there are corridors. This is a rectangular tank, and here it is being surrounded by all the four corridors. The four corridors actually protect it, or you can say make it intact in one place. Now, there were two flights of steps on the north and the south leading into a tank which made watertight by setting bricks on the edge and using the mortar of gypsum. During that time, if I talk about clay, gypsum is one such clay which has been used during that period of time. Most of the people used to use gypsum so that they can make buildings, also to make something watertight or airtight. You see, it is a chemical compound if I talk about gypsum, and there were two flights of steps. Now, if I talk about the great bath, there are two flights of steps, one in the northern part and other in the southern part. There are two flights of steps, or the staircases you can say, and which was made watertight by setting bricks. You see, the whole great bath was made by bricks. The bricks were being made strong by the gypsum itself, the chemical compound. Water from the tank flowed into a huge drain. Now, water from the tank flowed into a huge drain. Whatever water was there on the great bath, it has been flowed into a huge drain. It has been flowed into a huge drain, which means the great bath is connected to a huge drain. It is being connected to a huge drain so that the water, if it overflows, and the leftover water may go into the drain. Across a lane to the north lay a smaller building with 8 bathrooms and 4 on each side of a corridor with drains from each bathroom connecting to a drain that run along the corridor. Now, if I talk about this one, across a lane to the north lay a smaller building with 8 bathrooms. Now, across a lane, you can see at the side of the great bath. At the side of the great bath, there is a smaller building. A smaller building is there which is connected to 8 bathrooms, and each side has a corridor. Each side has a corridor which is connected to the drain itself. Now you see, first comes here the great bath. The great bath is then connected to the huge drain. As it is connected to the huge drain, this huge drain lay by the side of the small building. Here you can say it is a small building, and those small building is connected by the 8 bathrooms. It is connected by the 8 bathrooms, and each side of the 8 bathrooms has 4 sides of the corridor with drains connected to each other. You see, the drain is being divided. The great bath is being divided, and slowly it has been divided into other drains as well, so that the water can flow easily. Now, from each bathroom connecting to a drain that can run along the corridor. Now, whatever bathroom that I have mentioned here, it is also being connected to a drain itself. Whatever bathrooms are there, it has also been connected to the drain itself, so that the water can go through the drain very easily. As I have said you before, that in the Harappan civilization, the drainage system is considered to be the most advanced part. I hope you have understood about the citadel and the great bath. Now, after the great bath, let us discuss about the social differences. Now, what are the social differences among the people were being found out by the archaeologists during that time? Now, the social differences. First comes the burials. Now, if I talk about the burials here, the study of burials signify the certain strategy to understand social differences amongst people living within a particular culture. Now, as I have said before, that during that time people were very much cultural and tradition. Now, what kind of burials were there during that time? You see, burials, from the burials itself only, the archaeologists have understood a lot of things regarding their culture during that time, and how burials have divided the people into the rich class and the poor class. Now, amongst them is the burial, which signifies the strategy to understand social differences. Now, the social differences are being understood from the burials itself. And second comes at burials is the Harappan site. The dead were generally laid in pits. Sometimes there were differences in the way the burial pit was made. Now, most of the burial were being done under the ground. Most of the dead bodies were being kept under the ground, which are considered to be as the burial pits. And in some cases also, much of the differences were being noted in the burial pits. Some burial pits are different from the other burial pits as well. In some instances, the hollowed out space were lined out with bricks. Now, some of the burial pits are there which are being constructed or which are being made with bricks, which means the lined part is there, that lined part is covered with bricks. Now, the thought, some graves contain pottery and ornaments, perhaps indicating a belief that this could be used in the afterlife. Now, in some of the graves, when archaeologists were being excavating, during that time, much of the artifacts regarding the pottery and ornaments were being discovered. During that time, along with the dead, the burials of the pottery and ornaments was very much in common, so that they can use those pottery and ornaments in the afterlife. Jewelry has been found in the burials of both men and women. Now you see, those who are rich people, those who belong from the rich culture, jewelry were being found along with the dead bodies of the men and the women. In fact, in the excavation at the cemetery in the mid-1980s, a jasper bead and hundreds of microbeads were found near the skull of a male. Now, jasper bead, it is a semi-precious metal. It is semi-precious stone. If I talk about the jasper bead, it is a semi-precious stone. It was being buried along a dead body itself, and hundreds of microbeads were also being found, which means number of jewelries or hundreds of jewelries were being found along the skull of a male. In some instances, the dead were buried with copper mirrors. Now, in some cases also, the dead were being buried with the copper mirrors. Okay, first one, let me tell you regarding the burials. The first burials, the graves, it was being buried with the pottery and the ornaments itself, and the second is considered with the jasper bead, or the hundreds of bead were being buried along with the skull of a male member. And the third comes the dead were buried with the copper mirrors. Now, what are the things that were being buried during the Harappan excavations of the dead? So, first comes here the pottery and the ornaments. Second comes the jasper bead and the hundreds of bead. And third, it were being buried with the copper mirrors. Now, it were being buried with the copper mirrors. It has been found it here. Now, Harappan did not believe in burying the dead with the precious things. Now, in burying the dead with the precious things, in most of the cases, if I talk about the dead bodies, most of the precious things are not found along with the buried parts. Like very less amount of people used to bury those dead bodies with the precious things, because they did not believe in burying the dead bodies with the precious things. But in some of the dead bodies, precious diamonds were being found. Like if I talk about the jasper bead, it is semi-precious. It is semi-precious, and other hundreds of beads are also found to be semi-precious. But much more precious diamonds, or you can say much more precious ornaments, are not being found along with the dead bodies. Now here you see the dead body. Along with the dead body which has been excavated, you see this, if I say about this model or this artifact was being discovered in the year 1922. In the year 1922, it was being discovered along the Harappan site. Here you can see the pottery. Most of the important pottery were being buried along with it. Most of the important pottery and some of the foods were also being discovered in that part. Food like, for example, millets, grains, or other parts of rice were also being found in the pottery. So you can see how many pots are there along with the buried body. So from that only it has been discovered that most of the pottery and ornaments were being found, and people used to bury it along with the dead body itself. Now, here we will be understanding about the luxuries. Now, what are the luxuries were being preferred by the Harappan people during that time? As you can see here, another strategy to identify social difference is to study artifacts, which archaeologists broadly classify as utilitarian and luxuries. Now, utilitarian. As to study the social differences among the people in the Harappan civilization, the archaeologists studied about the utilitarian products and the luxuries. Now, what are the utilitarian products? Now, those products which are in use and those products which are being used mostly by the people around there are considered to be as utilitarian. And luxuries. Luxuries are considered to be those which are being preferred by the rich people during that time. The first category includes objects of daily use such as stone or clay items. Now, what are the first category of the items? The first category of the items are stone or clay items. The stone and clay items include querns, pottery, needles, body scrubbers, etc. They are found distributed among the settlement. Now, most of the stone or clay items such as the querns, the pottery, the needle, and also the body scrubbers. The body scrubbers were also being found during that time, and it has been distributed among the settlement, which means in most of the houses also, in most of the settlements also, this quite a few items were being excavated. Third comes, archaeologists found that objects were luxuries if they are rare or made from costly and non-local materials. Now, which objects are considered to be the luxuries, which means those things which are being made or which are being produced by rare materials or which are not localized. They are considered to be the luxuries. Like for example, during that time, expensive pots, expensive artifacts were also being excavated by the archaeologists. Also, the rare objects of valuable materials were found in the large settlements of Harappan and Mohenjodaro and are rarely found in small settlements. Now, most of the valuable items or the precious items were found in the larger cities or in the larger settlements of the Harappan and the Mohenjodaro civilization in comparison to the smaller settlements. Now, those cities or those towns which are very much rich or which are very much productive in comparison to the smaller settlements, there only the precious metals were being excavated. Now you see, these are the types of jewelry. You can see that what kind of jewelries were being excavated during that time, and all are jewelries. Now these jewelries are made of mud, some are made of clay, and some are being made by gold itself, gold or silver itself. You can see here. That these are the types of jewelry that were being excavated during that time. And one more thing, I'm very much sorry regarding mentioning gold. These are not made of gold, these are being made of copper. Actually, gold and silver were not being used during that time by the people. These are all copper. Copper was the most important material being discovered during the Harappan civilization. You see, some are there which are made of copper, some are there which are made of mud. You see, these are all the jewelries that were being excavated during that time. Some of the jewelries are there which are made with copper. And you see, Harappan civilization is mostly of the Bronze Age period. It is mostly of the Bronze Age period. So these are the jewelries. I hope so you have understood regarding the jewelries. Now, let us go to the MCQ part. So what we have understood, what we have learned, just discuss it with the help of the MCQ so that you can understand it more. So the important MCQs. Okay, the Indus Valley civilization is the civilization of which age? Yes, I have said you before, the Bronze Age. The Indus Valley civilization came from the Bronze Age period, which means during that period, that age is considered to be the Bronze Age period. We have also heard about the Stone Age period. The Stone Age period is long time ago. Before the Bronze period came the Stone Age period, and afterwards came the Bronze Age period. Now, the second question. Which of the following Harappan site is in Haryana? Now, which of the following Harappan site is in Haryana? This is Rakhighari. This is Rakhighari. You see, Rakhighari is in Haryana. You can see Kalibangan. Kalibangan is in Rajasthan and Dholavira is in Gujarat. And also if I talk about Lothal, Lothal is in Gujarat. And Rakhighari, it is in Haryana. Now, the Great Bath was discovered in which place? Now, in which place is the Great Bath was being discovered? The Great Bath is discovered in the Sindh province of Pakistan. Yes, it was being discovered in the Sindh province of Pakistan. Now let's come to the fourth question. Which architecture is considered to give example of the residential building? Now, which architecture is considered to give example of the residential building? Yes, I have already told you before, it is the lower town. In the lower town itself only there are many much residential buildings in comparison to the upper town. Sorry, in comparison to the citadel. Now, let's come in the fifth question. Representation on seals and terracotta sculpture indicate which animal to be known. Now, which animal were much more common representation on seals and terracotta? Yes, it has been bull. You see, the bull has been an important representation on the seals and the terracotta because bull has been much used during that time and most of the people used to use the bulls in the agricultural purposes. Now, the sixth question. Terracotta models were found at the sites of. Now, where the terracotta models were being found? You see, it has been found in Cholistan and Banawali. I'm so sorry. Here, the name will be Banawali. It's a little bit of mistake is there. It is in Cholistan and Banawali. You see, Cholistan is in parts of Pakistan and Banawali is around Gujarat. I hope so we have understood up to the sixth question. Now let's go to the seventh question. Number of wells discovered in Mohenjodaro. Now, how many wells were being discovered in Mohenjodaro? Yes, it's 700. Total 700 of the wells were being discovered in Mohenjodaro. Now the eighth question. Dash was a large rectangular tank in a courtyard surrounded by a corridor on all four sides. Yes, the correct answer is the Great Bath. The Great Bath is considered to be the large rectangular tank in a courtyard which was ever being discovered in the parts of the Harappan civilization. Now the ninth question. Here you see the Indian who was involved in the excavations of the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Now, who was that Indian person or the Indian individual who was involved in the excavation of the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro? Yes, it was R.D. Banerjee. So R.D. Banerjee was the most famous archaeologist who have excavated the Harappan and the Mohenjo-daro sites. Now, the last question. Harappa was located on the banks of the river. So now, on which river is the Harappa being located? Yes, it is on the Ravi river. So on the banks of the river Ravi, the Harappa is being located. So I hope so you have understood my class, and if you want to know any of the courses regarding Bhadra Academy, then you can contact us in this number 8638391721. Thank you.